Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that recently heard that NASA is sending Dwayne Johnson to the moon. That's right, everybody loves a moon rock. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of the moon, today we're going to take a look at One Small Step from Academy Games. In One Small Step from Academy Games, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of either the American or the Soviet space agencies as they attempt to put the first man on the moon and gain the most knowledge for mankind. The game board is a map of the Earth and the Moon with a path connecting them. You also have various worker placement spots on the board. You have also various spots for cards as well. Each player gets their own player board where they're going to collect missions and launch those missions, hopefully launch those missions, as well as the various resources it will take in order to do that. Now the game is divided into teams. Typically a 4-player game is you're going to have 2 American players and 2 Soviet players. Each player takes on the role of either the administrators or the engineers. And each player has 2 meeples, 2 administrative meeples, 2 engineer meeples, and they can do specific things in the game. Now there is an option for a beginner game which you can actually put an overlay on the worker options so that they're a lot simpler, it's a lot simplified, and it's an easier way to learn the game. There's a few rules that are not used in the game, or you can play the full advanced game. At the beginning of every game, players have beginning missions. Now these are very light missions, crewed satellites, speed records, airspeed records, these sorts of things. And you place them in T-1 and T-2. You also have the launch. So what you do during the game is you can go ahead and you slide those to the launch. The first thing you're going to do every round is slide those to the launch. Now you got to wait to the end of the round till you actually launch, but you need to look at exactly what icons, what resources are on those cards that you're going to want to get during the course of your turn in order to have a successful launch at the end of it. In Phase 2, you actually go ahead and replenish any cards that were taken the last turn. The first game round, that doesn't matter. They're all going to be new. If you have spent any tokens that need to be replenished, you can go ahead and replenish those as well during Phase 2. In Phase 3, you're going to draw cards. Now, here's how this works. You have to draw a mission card. Now, you can draw a mission card either from the satellite mission cards, which are usually easier, but they're not going to win you the game, but you may need them to start out. And then both the Soviets and the Americans each have their own crewed mission cards. So you can either pick from the satellite mission cards or the crewed mission cards, but you have to pick one of those missions. Now, secondly, you can pick a second mission. You can pick a second card, and it can either be another mission from either the satellites or the crewed mission cards, or you can pick one of the development cards. These are from the event deck. And these development cards, or rather the event cards, are either development cards, which can give you an extra worker spot on your turn if you can pay the cost for them, and they will also be personnel cards, which will also give you that worker spot, but then also later can be kind of permanent cards out there to give you a persistent personnel bonus if you spend personnel tokens on them later. More on that later. Next, you have the worker placement phase. Now, what you are doing is the board has, in the advanced game, the board has different spots for the engineers and the administrators. Well, that is to say they have the same spot, because only one worker can occupy a spot at a time, but they can only take the specific actions on that spot of either the administrator or the engineer. You can try to get resources by rolling die, and there's 3 different kinds of die. There's kind of the more common gray die, which can give you 2 resources potentially. There's the somewhat common red die, and then there's the uncommon brown die, and they give you the different kinds of resources you're going to need going forward. You can roll the die to do that. But you can also go to a spot that, like, for instance, if you've got 2 temporary resources, which are the round tokens, you can trade that in for 1 permanent resource, which means you spend it, so it's spent for that turn, but then it flips back, you've got it for the next turn. You're going to want to collect those. There's also going to be spots where you can control the media track. The media track is kind of like your initiative in the game. Who is ever further along or on top is going to have initiative, and they get to go first. But once you round it, once you get to 8, you got to go back 5 spaces, but then you got to take a media tile, which is a bonus tile, and give you some fun and interesting bonuses. You could also grab a satellite bonus is another thing. There's all sorts of different types of spots you can get. Of course, there's the spot where you can take a spot where somebody else has done something. There's also the spot where you can grab a hazard card, look at it, and put your hazard card on somebody else's mission so that it makes their mission harder to fulfill. As I say, if you've got development cards out in front of you, you can use those. There's spaces on those that will give you options. You can go ahead and do those too. You may also get on a space that could give you an advancement deck token. This is like a nuclear symbol token. You can get that, and then if you can pay the other costs, you can actually buy advancement cards. And these will give you either persistent or one-time bonuses that you can use during your turn. After the worker placement turn, you can go ahead and actually put down, if you have any personnel tokens, you can go ahead and place those on your personnel cards. Place those on the personnel cards, that will give you some other advantages as well. During round 6, if you have any cards that you took from the deck during phase 2, you can then go ahead, pay the cost to put those down in front of you so that they can become worker cards in subsequent turns. Finally, phase 7. During phase 7, you've got the launch phase. So any cards you have, and you can have multiple cards in the launch phase, you go ahead and launch them. Now what you have to do is essentially you look at all the requirements that are needed. And again, these are different symbols. Sometimes they're things like money or personnel. Sometimes they're fuel or the paper airplane symbol. Or they can be things more advanced like parachutes, life support, and capsules. And you go ahead and you pay all of the costs for that. If there's a hazard card on there, you look to see what the hazard is, if it is a satellite mission or a crewed mission, and you have to also do that specific hazard. But if you can successfully pay for all of those costs, you go ahead and you launch your satellite or crewed ship into space. You might also have the option of taking one of the tokens, which is either side. They start on either side, so they don't matter, but they're the American or Soviet satellites or crewed ships. You can take those off and reveal new spaces on the board that then you subsequently can use for your workers. And then the crewed ships you actually put on spaces on the moon track toward the moon. If they do that, you actually get to grab the specific bonus tile, and sometimes that means you also have to get a hazard card and put it on one of your own cards, which kind of sucks. But critically, you can then get whatever bonuses are on the other side of that, which may help you, give you victory points and all sorts of things. Now, throughout the game, you are gaining victory points. You're gaining more and more victory points along the victory track. These are some of the actions you can go to and things that come up in cards. You're constantly getting victory points in the game. So you're going ahead, you're collecting the victory points, you're doing the steps of this game, and you are working with your partner, trying to make decisions about which missions you want, which cards you want, where you want the workers to go. And then finally, after the first crewed mission lands on the moon, the game ends. You go ahead, look and see if you've got anything else that gives you score. You look at the VP track. Whoever has the highest VP score wins one small step. So before I get started with my thoughts on this, ladies and gentlemen, I do need to let you know I am currently working with Academy Games in developing my own game design, which I've been working on for a while now, and it's taken forever because it's entirely my fault. I've got so many things I'm trying to do. I was trying to get graduated, then I had to move, and now I'm trying to get my dissertation, whip it into book form so I can submit it to publishers. So I'm working on some other things, and I'm not giving enough attention to that, and I really, really need to. But just so you are aware, Academy Games is developing my game. I am working with them, so I'm not. I want to be transparent about that, and I want to let you know I am not letting that that fact cloud my judgment. I'm going to give you my opinions on this game as I see it. So One Small Step is a worker game, a Euro game, and as you know, I'm not a huge fan of Euros. There's some I really like a lot. Tudor from Academy I actually really like quite a bit. Like Courtier, Dominaire from AEG I really liked. I mean, there's some I really, really like, but generally they're not my go-to games. I'm not a huge fan of the Euros. And worker placement games, I do like worker placement. Again, they're not my favorite, but I'll have fun with them. This one of the reasons why, again, I'm not such a Euro guy, is the fact that Euros I prefer more thematic games, less abstract games. Now this has got a good general theme of the space race, and I like that a lot, but I mean, it's not it's still fairly abstracted. You know, with the worker placement and the resources, there's still a lot of abstraction here. But it's, as Euros go, it's fairly thematic. Now, one thing about this game that I really, really like, and this notion of a team worker placement game, which means you got to play it with 4 players to get that full effect. And I've played this game a few times now, and I've only played it with 4 players, so I can't talk about the lower player counts. But with 4 players, I really liked that aspect. I like the negotiation with your partner. Well, what should we do? Should we take another manned mission, or should we do another satellite mission? There's hazards and perils for both. What should we do? And I really liked how those negotiations lead to some fun possibilities in the game. So I really, really liked that a lot. That's probably my favorite aspect of this game, is the fact that it's a team worker placement. You have to work together. So if one of you, or heaven forbid, both of you have an AP problem, heaven forbid, right? But it's good, and I like that, and that's a lot of fun. Now, there are differences between the roles. Certainly, because I played the administrators and I played the engineers, and the options you have for either with regard to the worker placement, you do feel a difference between those roles. It's not huge, but it's there. You do feel like they are doing different things, and I think that was interesting, and that's cool. But there wasn't really, I was kind of hoping for more of an asymmetric play between the Soviets and the Americans. There's a little bit, some of that comes out in the cards, but not enough. I was really hoping maybe there were, I don't know, fun commie things that the Soviets could do, or, you know, really dynamic things that the Americans could do. But, you know, so that was one thing I was really hoping for that I didn't get out of the game. Now, also, too, one of my issues with the game is, like I say, I played it a couple of times now, and it seemed to me that the game probably lasts a little bit longer than the fun it generates. I'm not sure that's going to be the case when you play this game several times and you can make quicker decisions because you know the board and the actions fairly quickly. You know them better, and you know the cards better. So I think once you get into it more and play it more, that's not going to be a problem. But in these first games where you're stumbling and you're trying to find stuff, that became an issue, and it became a little tedious. And part of that tedium is the rule book is not great. It's got some parts that really shine, that work, that explain things well and clearly, and then there's other parts that I'm still kind of scratching my head on. I actually reached out to Academy Games a couple of times to ask them some questions about specific rules, because I was unsure of them, like the hazard cards. You know, it was give somebody else a hazard card. Would you just draw it off the deck and give it to them? Or do you get a hand of them that then you pass them? We weren't sure. It wasn't quite clear. And maybe it is clear. Maybe it's in there in the rules and I just didn't see it. But we were looking, you know, and that's the problem when you keep looking through the rules, and you're not finding what you're after. Some of the timing questions about when you're playing cards and when they, you know, because the development cards don't last if you don't put a worker on them. So exactly when they come out, where they go, with the personnel cards as well. Some of those things we were really wrestling with, and there were some of the things about putting the tokens on a track were a little ambiguous too. We didn't quite understand that. There was a lot of sections in this game where things were kind of ambiguous, and I think it kind of does need a fact. Now again, these answers to our questions may be there, but all of us were reading through this book a few times, and we kind of couldn't find the answers we were looking for, and that is maybe a big problem in and of itself. So I wish the rule book had been a little tighter, or I wish there's a fact that was available, because there's a few things we were kind of stumbling on there. So that's not an insignificant criticism. Again, I think once you play the game more, we get those definitive answers, and you play the game more, I think the game will probably clip a lot better, and that length issue won't be such a problem. But for the beginning games where we were looking at the rule book, it was getting a little tedious toward the end. What I'm trying to say about One Small Step is it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's stuff about it I really liked, and there's stuff I had some issues with. I'm optimistic, though, that the stuff I had issues with, for the most part, with more play, won't be issues. But I had issues on them these first few games I played, and just know that going into it. So with all of these bundled together, I'd probably say I'd be happy to play this game again. I think it'd be fun to play it again, and if my friends suggest let's play it, I'll play it and I'll probably enjoy it. I don't know how quick I'm going to be to suggest it anytime soon. And more than anything, that's just because it's Euro-y and it's worker placement, and I prefer the more thematic stuff like that. But I like this game. Liked this game, didn't love it, but I liked it. A good, strong like. I'm going to say try it before you buy it. I think if you are somebody who really likes Euros and likes smart Euros, doesn't mind a little ambiguity that they'll probably get a FAQ out sooner or later, and you'll get that taken care of. You don't mind that sort of thing, and you're somebody that really likes the puzzle, you'll like this game. You will like this game. I know you will like this game. If you're like me, you like something a little more thematic, you may have fun with this, you may enjoy it, but I don't know that it's going to be one you'll keep going back to. So try it before you buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave comments for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and I used to work in a planetarium, ladies and gentlemen, and we'd always get people coming in there, and they'd say things like, the moon landing didn't really happen. And the trick is, you always want to trump those people. You always want to say, you believe in the moon?
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Because of budget cutbacks, the Earth Star Alliance has only given us one escape pod.